Yo, what's up guys? This is Andy from Optimize Fit, and this is a little Cliff Note video I'm putting together to give you the highlights of my most recent article about fasting. So let's get into it. I'm a really big fan of self-experimentation. I read stuff all the time online and it gets me super excited, and it's really fun to actually implement these things and try them for myself and then get to share them with my audience and with you guys and see if maybe you can learn something too from my experience, or to just collaborate and give me information so I can try other things. It's a great, fun activity. I love doing it. So this most recent article I wrote was on the topic of fasting. Fasting's always been in vogue for some time, but I figured it'd be kind of cool to do a small experiment and just go without eating for up to 5 days in this particular experiment and see how it goes. So this is going to be a two-parter. The first video I'm making is actually just going to talk about fasting, talking about the benefits or some of the risks and why you should consider doing it or not consider doing it, and give you the lowdown on that. Then in the second video I'm going to put out, I'm going to do more of a reflection type of video and talk about my own experiment and experience of that and share that with you, and so you can kind of learn something or just kind of laugh at my misfortune, because I had some ups and downs. It was an interesting experience overall. So why fasting? Well, I became curious about this just from like an evolutionary standpoint, from like an ancestral perspective and things. And I know that from like a hunter and gatherer standpoint, we didn't always have an abundance of food. And because of that, our body has been programmed to be able to go through these bouts of feast and famine and to be able to survive and thrive in these sort of scenarios. And so it's kind of cool to sort of emulate that in this modern world and try to challenge the body in a way to see how it would respond when essentially you're calorically restricting yourself for multiple days on end. Now, there's a caveat, and I want to say this, like, this isn't for everyone. If you're, chronically stressed, you're working out too much, you have a stressful job, something's going on in your life where you feel like your sleep is kind of messed up, and so, just these small markers. Listen to your body. Don't force yourself to do this just because it seems cool. If you feel like you're stressed, I wouldn't recommend it, because fasting is stressful on the body. I mean, it's kind of common sense here, but I want to just put that out there, that it is stressful. And a lot of stuff you may have read about, like intermittent fasting and all these things being negative, generally it's connected to people that are trying to do these things when they actually shouldn't, because they're in a hyper stress state. These chronic stressful situations that we live, and then on top of that we pack another layer of stress from doing a fast or something like that, isn't optimal from a health standpoint. But if you feel like you have most of your ducks in a line and generally you feel relatively calm and have your stuff together, I would say implementing a fasting strategy would be something really worth looking into. So what are the reasons why you would actually want to fast? Let's get into that right now. One of the main reasons why fasting is beneficial is from a digestive aids standpoint. So obviously, not eating food, your digestive system can sort of calm down. It's not constantly having to work. Things that are maybe in the digestive tract can get pushed out, and then it's just generally doing some spring cleaning in your GI tract. That goes for your liver as well. Your liver is your primary detox organ, and if it's not having to constantly be working as much, that's going to help give it some time to, take a breather. The liver is used for detox, cleansing, there's other things too, like hormones, producing bile and things like that as well. But so it's doing a lot. And so obviously, if you're not eating food, it's not having to do all these extra things as often, so you're giving it a little bit of a power nap in a sense. The other thing that's kind of interesting with this fasting thing is there's like sort of a psychological thing going on here. And what I mean by that is, I noticed in my own experiment, when I wasn't eating, I would find my mind drifting to food and using food, and I've sort of discovered that I was using food as a placeholder or a means to procrastinate in other activities. I wasn't even hungry necessarily. I was more bored, but through that process, it would sort of want me or my mind would sort of lead me down this path of eating. And it was really interesting to reflect on that and realize how much I use food as a placeholder in my life. And I think a lot of people would resonate with this and be able to take something from this. So it's sort of afterwards doing this, I became way more mindful of the food I'm eating and when I'm eating, because I had that moment of separation in that experiment of fasting. Now also when you do a fast, a lot of people report a little bit of a boost in energy. I noticed that in myself, and that's kind of a nice little handy bonus as well. And along with energy, you also get a little bit of mental clarity. And I'll get into that in a little bit later, this sort of the mechanisms behind that, but it's a very interesting thing to note. And one of the final benefits of fasting that I found is this sort of calm or peace that comes over you. And it really made me realize why so many religious traditions do have a fasting component. I felt very centered. I just generally was sort of at peace with the world around me, and it was this very nice calm sensation. I didn't feel as heavy as I generally do as I'm living my normal life eating food. Okay, so at this point you're probably maybe a little bit curious about fasting, and there are like various ways to starve yourself essentially. A lot of them are a little bit more hip than others, and you've probably heard about a lot of them. Things like intermittent fasting is interesting, where you're going in small bouts of caloric restriction, essentially skipping breakfast and shortening the window to which you're actually eating food. And that gives you a larger window, like up to generally 18 hours, where you're not 16 to 18 hours where you're not actually eating food every day. So it's giving you this longer fast period, because if you think about it, when you're asleep, you are fasting. So you're just extending that window of fasting a little bit later into the day. And that's essentially intermittent fasting. Then there's, sometimes people will do like single day fasting, where they're just like, eat dinner one night, then the next day go through the entire day and then eat dinner that other day. And then that will actually provide like a little bit of the benefits of fasting. And again, later I'm going to get into some of the other benefits of fasting. So that's also a nice, interesting technique. Then there's like some of the real popular ones that have been around a while. Things like juice fasting, or like the master cleanse, where with the juicing, you're obviously juicing fruits and vegetables, getting the minerals and the vitamins and all those phytonutrients and antioxidants that you're getting from the vegetables and fruits, getting that into your body, so you're giving yourself a lot of rich nutrition. And then with the master cleanse, it's a little bit more basic with the lemon, the cayenne pepper, and then the water. And also some sort of sugar, so like honey or maple syrup, to give you a little bit of extra energy from that sugar. So those ones seem to be pretty popular. And then there's like water fasting, and then the list keeps going on and on and on. So that gives you a little bit of an idea. Now for me, in my own experiment and also in my article, I focused more on the type of fasting that evokes ketosis. So as I just mentioned with the juice fasting and the master cleanse, you're getting sugar into your body. So when you juice vegetables or fruit, but even vegetables, and you're juicing that down, you're removing the fiber, which is exposing and opening up those carbohydrates, which then get converted into sugar into the body, which is fine. And a lot of people have really amazing benefits doing these types of fastings or cleanses, but you're still getting pretty high amount of sugar into the body, which elevates your blood glucose, and that won't get you into ketosis. And I'll get into this in a moment, but the idea for my experiment and what this article is focusing on is trying to get your body into ketosis. So I'm not trying to poo-poo on these types of fasting. These other ones like the juice fasting or the master cleanse, I'm sure lots of people have amazing results from that, but I just want to focus a little bit more on the ketogenic aspect of trying to fast, getting into ketosis. So just to explain the whole deal with ketosis, is basically you're producing what are called ketone bodies, and this is essentially a alternative energy substrate to glucose. So glucose is a sugar that the body uses for energy, and when your body doesn't get enough of that, because in the case of like what I was trying to do, not taking in juice or anything like that, your body's going to have to shift over and start making ketones from fat. So it actually will use your own fat stores, and the liver then will then convert those into called essentially ketone bodies. And then we can use those as an alternative energy substrate. So I mentioned earlier about some of the broader benefits of fasting. Now, the benefits of a ketone fast or just being in nutritional ketosis, and that's a whole different subject, but essentially just still producing ketone bodies, there's a lot of really interesting benefits there. So let's get into some of those benefits right now. So when you're producing ketone bodies and not using glucose, you're essentially burning fat, which that's obviously a nice benefit right there. But also through that process, you're developing more insulin sensitivity. And so your insulin receptors are actually becoming more sensitive or more reactive. And this will help you even later when you start eating foods that are higher in carbs and giving you more sugar, because then your insulin's able to react more appropriately and you're not going to overly store and then put on as much fat. So there's actually this long-term benefit of sort of conditioning your body to be more just functioning better at a more optimal level when dealing with sugar. And this happens by trying to train your body to shift into ketosis, doing a fast like this, or eating in a nutritionally ketotic way. And I don't know if you ever feel grouchy when you don't eat or something, but I like to say you're hangry. That's actually connected to being more sugar adapted. That's a really good indicator that you're more sugar adapted. And training yourself to periodically go into these fasted states and use your own body fat will help modulate that to not, so you won't feel that way. I've tested it myself and it's really amazing. Like I can actually go through moments in days where I won't eat, and if I feel hungry, I'll feel hungry, but I won't feel that hangry sensation. I won't feel grouchy because I know my body's able to shift over and start using my own body fat to use as energy. So it's kind of like a little added bonus, and it helps keep you, I think that's just, you know, how we're designed. We're supposed to be able to flip-flop like that. So I feel like it's just a good way to keep your body conditioned and functioning as it was appropriately designed to function. We're not always supposed to have this constant drip of sugar, getting carbs all the time. From an ancestral standpoint, there were moments in periods of time where we didn't have access to carbs, like and our bodies evolved and adapted to do that. So to re-tap into that mechanism is really, really profound. And sort of connecting into the last point, being more fat adapted, this is also going to have an effect on how well your blood sugar functions. So if you have like high blood sugar issues, your fasting blood sugar is a little bit higher, kind of connecting with the insulin component. Doing these fasting or trying to train your body to become more fat adapted will help bring that down. So also from like a blood lipid standpoint, so your actual cholesterol, there's a positive correlation with ketosis and that as well. So the HDL, the good cholesterol, there's been a lot of research showing it increases that, and myself included, I've seen an increase from doing these periodic bouts of fasting. The LDL, the bad cholesterol, that goes down, and as well as the triglycerides. So just your general ratios of cholesterol and the lipoproteins, like those ratios tend to improve, which is really good. That makes your doctor happy. That's better for you from like a atherosclerosis standpoint, so you're less prone to get heart disease, generally speaking. So that's something also to be mindful of. And there's also this really interesting effect of when you're actually in a fasted state, your body's less prone to actually multiply with its cells. So instead of dividing with the cells to make new cells, because you're always making new cells in the body, so instead of them just dividing and multiplying, it goes through this new process, or it tends to dominate in this process called autophagy, which basically means is like instead of the cells multiplying, they actually will just repair themselves. And this is great from a longevity standpoint. I don't want to get too technical. And the article I wrote sort of explains this a little bit deeper, but essentially when you're repairing cells instead of multiplying your cells, that actually is a good indicator for your biological age. So it actually doesn't wear down your cells as quickly by them repairing. So that's like a really, really cool thing that happens whenever you're fasting. Your body will just sort of because it takes a lot of energy to like multiply cells. So it's more of an energy saver to repair the existing cells than to continually multiply them. And then like one of the big ones that I like really thought was really nifty doing a fast was the mental clarity component. So when you're burning ketones, ketones burn a lot cleaner in the body than glucose. The brain, you know, this is a little bit more up to debate, but like the brain seems to preference them in a way over glucose. And I think the reason why this is connected to inflammation. So glucose goes through this glycation process, or can go through this glycation process in the presence of proteins. And what happens is like the little sugar molecules will sort of react and stick to the protein, and it turns into these things called advanced glycation end products, or AGEs. And like these are basically free radicals in the body, and free radicals cause inflammation. They basically tell the body to produce inflammatory signaling agents. So inflammation is not always necessarily bad, but like when you're getting a lot of inflammation from lots of different things, and on top of that from sugar, you're just creating this additional stress load on the body. So being in ketosis, or putting your body in bouts of ketosis or in a fasted state, will help reduce the amount of those AGEs in the body. And then you're actually going to have less inflammation, and with less inflammation, you're going to have less brain inflammation. And there's like a mental clarity component to that, which I've observed, and I found it was really profound. And it was one of the biggest things I really favored when I noticed my body was in ketosis. So that's it. Like, this is kind of like I know it's a very quick overview of fasting and just some of the benefits. I hope you found that interesting. Please comment below of any questions, because I know I was kind of rapid fire with a lot of stuff. But the next article and video that's going to come out pretty soon is then going to go deeper into my own experience doing a 5-day fast, getting my body into ketosis during that fast, and sort of the struggles, what I learned from it, and different ways to make that process easier. So if you'd like to try it, and if you feel like you're in good health and can try it, I would highly recommend sticking around and looking for that. So thanks so much, guys. I really appreciate you listening to me rant about all this really cool stuff, and I'll see you next time.